Trying to be original is like trying to invent a brand new color. You sit there, straining your brain, hoping you'll stumble onto some magical color the world's never seen. When in reality, all you get is frustration. Because here's the truth, it doesn't exist. But instead of admitting that, what do? You keep chasing. You keep sitting there, staring at your notebook or your blank screen thinking, if I don't create something nobody's ever done before, what's the point? You want to be known for something different. You want your work to stand out, to feel like lightning that leaves everyone speechless. But every time you sit down to create, it feels like you're already late to the party. Someone else has said it. Someone else has done it. And you sit there spiraling, thinking, well, maybe I'm just not creative enough. Stop right there, because that is the biggest lie you've ever swallowed. You are not unoriginal. You are not boring. You are not creatively doomed. You've just been sold this toxic myth that being creative means pulling some never-before-seen masterpiece out of thin air, like some tortured genius in a movie. That's not creativity. That's marketing. That's a fairy tale. The truth? Every single genius idea you've ever admired wasn't born from nowhere. It was borrowed, stolen, recycled, twisted, combined, reframed, until it felt new. Steve Jobs didn't invent the phone. TikTok didn't invent short videos. Even Picasso didn't invent cubism out of thin air. They took what existed, and they spun it their way. And here's the harsh reality. The more you obsess over being original, the less original you'll actually be. Because you're too scared to even begin, too scared to make something. And that fear? That's the real creativity killer. So hear me, you don't need to be the next Einstein. You don't need to invent a new color. You just need to be the first because creativity has never been about making something from nothing. It's about making something hit differently. And the question now is, how? How do you actually do that without chasing your tail in this fake race for originality? That's exactly what we're going to dig into in the next section. Why chasing original is secretly the thing holding you back and what you should be chasing instead. Let's be real for a second. The obsession with being original, with coming up with something no one has ever seen before, that's not inspiring. That's not motivating. That's paralyzing. And the funny part? It all comes from this Hollywood lie we've been spoon-fed. You know the one. The genius spark. The tortured creative sitting in a dark room until, boom, a light bulb flashes above their head. Angels sing and the perfect, never-before-seen idea falls straight from heaven into their notebook. Sounds glamorous, right? Yeah, it's also completely fake. Because in the real world, creativity doesn't show up like lightning. It shows up like construction work. Brick by brick, piece by piece. Every great thing you admire was built out of influences, out of recycled parts, out of bits and pieces of the world someone else already made. Think about it. Steve Jobs didn't invent the smartphone. He just made it beautiful and addictive enough that you never wanted to put it down. Netflix didn't invent movies. They just combined DVDs, the internet, and convenience into something that felt like magic. TikTok? Not original. Vine already existed. But TikTok took short videos, added music, slapped on a dopamine-hacked interface, and suddenly it became the world's biggest stage. That's the reality nobody wants to admit. Nothing is completely original. Everything is a remix. But here's the trap. You've been taught that if your idea looks like something else, you're a fraud. So what happens? You sit in isolation. You reject inspiration. You shut yourself off from the very things that could actually feed your creativity. You think, I can't watch what others are doing. I don't want to be influenced. Meanwhile, every brilliant creator out there is openly stealing, remixing, twisting, and laughing their way to the bank. And let's talk about this paradox of trying too hard. When you're obsessed with being 100% unique, you freeze. You get so focused on being different that you never even start. It's like staring at a blank canvas, terrified to touch the brush because, what if my stroke looks like someone else's? Guess what? It will. But that's not the point. The point is how you do it. And here's where it gets ironic. The harder you try to be original, the less original you actually are. Because instead of creating, you're overthinking. Instead of experimenting, you're suffocating. Instead of making something that's real, you're chasing some imaginary prize that doesn't even exist. Which is why, when you sit there trying to force originality, your brain feels like it's been microwaved. You're skipping the very part of the process that makes ideas flow naturally. And that's exactly why you're stuck. Originality isn't the goal. Originality is the byproduct. The goal is to remix, reframe, redeliver. That's the stuff that actually makes people stop scrolling and pay attention. And if you're still skeptical, good. Because in this next section, I'm going to break down the 3 hidden truths about what really makes someone creative, and spoiler alert, none of them require you to invent a brand new color. So if originality isn't the goal, what is? What actually makes you creative? Here's the part nobody told you. Creativity is not about inventing, it's about transforming. And if you look at the people we call geniuses, you'll see the same 3 hidden truths over and over again. Let's start with the first one. The first thing that actually makes you instantly creative is combination. Creativity happens when 2 normal things collide in a way that suddenly feels obvious, but nobody else bothered to connect the dots before. Think about the stuff you use every single day. Netflix wasn't a lightning bolt. It was just DVDs, plus the internet, plus the craving for instant gratification. Boom, billion-dollar company. TikTok? Vine already walked so TikTok could sprint. They didn't invent short video. They just combined music, editing tools, and an endless scroll feed designed to hijack your brain chemistry. Even sneakers. Nike didn't invent shoes. They fused athletic gear with pop culture and turned it into identity. That's the game. 2 existing ideas fused together in a way that suddenly clicks. So the question you should be asking isn't, how do I invent something brand new? The question is, what 2 ideas can I smash together in my own way? Here's the second thing that actually makes you instantly creative. Curated theft. Intentional influence. Here's the spicy truth. Every creator steals, every single one. But the difference between a copycat and a genius? Selectivity. It's not about copying someone's entire blueprint. It's about absorbing 1,000 little influences until what comes out of you is so blended, it feels fresh. Picasso supposedly said, "Good artists copy, great artists steal." And whether he actually said it or not, the principle stands. The best creators are shameless thieves, but they're also editors. They pick, they choose, they curate. So here's how you apply it. Pick 3 creators you admire. Study them like a detective. Don't just binge their content, dissect it. What's the 10% you love that you'd keep? What's the 10% you'd flip on its head? And what's the 80% you'd ditch completely? That's how you stop being a clone and start being a remix. The point isn't to avoid influence. The point is to get influenced strategically. Because the more influences you let in, the more unique your output becomes. The third thing actually makes you instantly creative. Point of view is power. Now let's get brutally honest. You don't need a new story. You don't need a groundbreaking idea. What you need, what people are actually craving, is a new lens. Think about it. 2 people can tell the same joke word for word. One gets crickets. The other brings the house down. What's the difference? Delivery, timing, voice, point of view. Your creativity is not in the story, it's in the spin. It's in your weird perspective, your lived experiences, your personality, your tone. That's why you can watch 100 different YouTubers all making videos about productivity, but one feels like a boring lecture while another makes you want to rearrange your entire life. Same information, different POV, has lived your life. Nobody else has your mix of humor, pain, scars, quirks, and obsessions. That's your creative fingerprint. And when you lean into that, suddenly the pressure to be original evaporates. So remember this, creativity isn't about waiting for lightning. It's about combining ideas in unexpected ways. It's about curating your influences and remixing them strategically. And above all, it's about daring to deliver your perspective louder, sharper, and bolder than anyone else. If creativity really came from inventing something nobody's ever seen before, wouldn't we have run out of ideas centuries ago? And yet here we are, still finding new ways to say old truths, still remixing, still innovating, which brings us to the practical side of this. Because knowing the truths is one thing, but how do you actually apply this tomorrow when you sit down to create? That's what we're about to break down next. 5 ridiculously practical ways to make yourself instantly more creative, without ever chasing original again. So now you know the 3 hidden truths about creativity. Great, but here's where most people get stuck. You understand the truth. But when you sit down to actually create, you still freeze. You still stare at the screen like it's judging you. So let's cut the theory talk and get brutally practical. Here are 5 ways to become instantly more creative, without wasting another second chasing originality. 1. Swipe, file your curiosity. Creativity doesn't come out of thin air. It comes from inputs. If your brain doesn't have raw material to play with, of course you're going to feel empty. So here's the move. Start a swipe file. That just means collecting anything that makes you stop and think, wait, that's interesting. It could be a headline that slaps, a TikTok hook that grabs you, a quote that won't leave your head, even a random meme. Toss it all into one folder. Why? Because creativity is pattern recognition. The more patterns you collect, the more connections your brain starts making. And the next time you're staring at a blank page, instead of begging your brain for a miracle, you'll have a vault of sparks ready to ignite. Now use the what-if formula. This one's powerful. Ask yourself, what if I took this idea and added this twist? That's literally it. That's how half of culture evolves. What if rap music collided with Broadway? You get Hamilton. What if superhero movies looked gritty and tragic instead of cartoony? You get The Dark Knight. What if a self-help video was shot like a boxing trailer? Boom! Suddenly you've got a viral format. So instead of sitting there thinking, I need something brand new, start asking, what if I... That little 2-word question can flip a boring idea into something that makes people stop scrolling. 3. Copy, then twist. This is going to sound counterintuitive, but listen carefully. Sometimes the best way to learn creativity is to copy. Take a viral format that works in your niche. Copy the structure exactly once. Don't reinvent. Just study how the beats hit, how the pacing works, how the hook keeps you watching. And then, on round 2, that's when you twist it. Add your story, your rant, your style. Suddenly, it's not copying, it's remixing. It's training wheels for creativity, because you can't break the rules until you first understand them. Expose yourself to the opposite. Here's a trap most creators fall into. They only consume content inside their bubble. Musicians only listen to musicians. YouTubers only watch other YouTubers in their niche. Writers only read writing advice. But creativity comes from contrast. It's when you pull inspiration from outside the echo chamber. A law student watching stand-up comedy might learn more about storytelling than from any textbook. A fitness coach watching cooking shows might pick up pacing tricks that make their workout videos way more engaging. So the next time you feel stuck, don't dig deeper into your niche. Go the opposite direction. Expose yourself to something random, strange, even uncomfortable. That's the fertilizer for originality. 5. Share before you're ready. This one stings, but it's the most important. Stop waiting until you feel unique. Enough! Stop hiding drafts because you're worried someone will say, that's not original. Creativity doesn't grow in your head. It grows in public. You sharpen your voice by testing it. You figure out your perspective by sharing it. Feedback is the thing that molds you, not endless overthinking in isolation. So here's the tough love. Post before you feel ready. Ship before it's perfect. Share before it's polished. Because every time you do, you level up. And the more you move, the more creative you become. Now, let's zoom out for a second. Notice something? None of these strategies are about inventing something brand new. They're about noticing, remixing, reframing, sharing. In other words, living creativity instead of chasing it. And that brings us to the final piece of this puzzle. Because if you've been paying attention, you've probably realized something big. What you thought made you creative is actually the very thing holding you back. So let's rip the mask off in this next section and talk about the real definition of creativity and why you've had it upside down this whole time. So here's the hard truth. What you thought made you creative was actually the very thing killing your creativity. You thought you had to wait for the perfect idea to strike. You thought you had to be different from everyone else to matter. You thought if your idea looked anything like something that already existed, you'd be called a fraud. And that pressure? That's why you've been stuck. That's why you keep staring at the screen, second-guessing yourself into oblivion. You've been chasing originality like it's some golden trophy when really, originality was never the goal. The truth is this: you don't need to invent. You need to filter. You don't need to be a genius. You need to be a remixer. You don't need to make something nobody's ever seen. You need to make something people feel like they've never felt before. That's the actual game. That's what makes art stick. That's what makes people remember. Not a brand new color, but the way you paint with the colors we already have. Think about your favorite movie, your favorite book, your favorite YouTuber. Are they original? Sure, in their delivery. But the ingredients? They're the same ingredients everyone else had access to. The difference, the thing that makes them unforgettable, is the perspective, the angle, the flavor they brought to it. And that's the irony. You don't become creative by rejecting what already exists. You become creative by embracing it, bending it, twisting it, and letting your point, a view drip all over it until it becomes something only you could make. So the next time your brain tells you, "This isn't original enough," I want you to laugh, because you'll know the truth. Originality is the byproduct, not the starting point. Creativity isn't about thinking harder. It's about seeing deeper. It's not about creating something new. It's about creating something you. And that's where I'll leave you with this thought. The world doesn't need more people chasing unicorn ideas. It doesn't need tortured geniuses waiting for lightning bolts. What it needs, what it's starving for, is more daring remixers. People bold enough to take what exists, spin it through their own lens, and deliver it in a way that makes us say, "Damn, I've never seen it like that before." So stop chasing originality. Start chasing resonance. Because at the end of the day, the most creative thing you can ever be is unapologetically you.